It's Dee Dee on the spot.
Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to my guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give us a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Cody Held on the podcast. He's a part of his own solo project. He produces music, and he also plays some really great music. I just listened to his music before this podcast. Cody, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory of what got you into music and kind of what inspires you?
Yeah, for sure. So, I started playing music. Well, I got my first guitar when I was 12. One of those situations, I just kind of worked all summer to get a guitar for my dad. Didn't play a whole lot of it. It was just kind of a back and forth thing. I didn't really take it seriously until I was like 14. That's when I really started hitting it. I was doing sports most of my life from like basically kindergarten until about early high school. And then my parents got divorced in ninth grade, and then that's kind of when I started hitting guitar pretty hard because they're like, oh, you can just kind of do whatever you want now. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go play music. As far as inspiration, honestly, like AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, a lot of like the old style bands really got me going. I think the main driving band behind my influence and stuff was probably like Avenged Sevenfold. They're really sick back in the day. I still listen to them sometimes. But yeah, I really started taking it seriously about 14, learning a lot of songs, learning how to write and all that. Joined my first band when I was 16 with Zach, actually, from Vita Colta, who you talked to earlier. It was just that kind of like scene kid, asking Alexandria type of situation. Did that for about a year and a half. The band kind of broke apart. And then I was also in the band What We Built with him, about like 4 years after the first band we were in. Just wrote a lot of songs, kind of networked with musicians, things like that. And so just been kind of grinding and trying to learn as much as I can ever since then.
At what point did you decide that you kind of wanted to go on your own for a little bit?
So it's definitely really hard finding other musicians to work with. Every drummer I know is already in like 2 or 3 bands. And then like being in a band with like 4 other guys, whatever, it's definitely a struggle with scheduling, egos, like all this stuff, it can be a real grind. And so for me, it kind of got to the point where I was seeing all these solo artists start to go out, and I definitely listened to like a lot of Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and guys like that. And so just kind of got to the point where I was like, all right, well, I think I'm just going to try and do my own thing for a minute and release some music under my name. And the plan was to kind of put it out as like a musical resume. I put out a 4-song EP, and just want to have something with my name on it so I can kind of like show people like what I can do and what I write and things like that, and hopefully use that to like connect and maybe join another band or something like that. But it seems like I might be actually trying to do something with this and play live with this and stuff like that. So yeah,
it's absolutely awesome. So for these songs, do you play all of the instruments yourselves, or do you get maybe like a friend or two to just come in and help you play some of the instruments?
So I wrote everything, about like 98% of it. The drums are the real drums that were sampled, so they're programmed, but they're sampled real live drums. I wrote the majority of those when I was with my producer. He kind of finessed them up a little bit, but those are, I guess, fake or whatever. Then the guitars I recorded all myself. The bass, Zach from Vita Colta recorded that for me because I don't have a bass, and so he came over and laid down those tracks. And then like the synth and piano and other stuff I have in there, that's all sampled as well. But yeah, I did write pretty much like 98% of it.
Do you find that producing songs by yourself is just a lot easier because, like you said, you can use technology nowadays, especially to kind of get the drums that you want, to kind of get some of the other instruments that you want? Do you find that to be a lot easier than just having to rely on someone else then to play it the certain amount of way that you envision it?
Yes and no, because I've pretty much always stuck to guitar. I never really ventured out learning other instruments and things like that. So it was definitely a learning curve, figuring out how to write drums, get the types of drums I wanted, and then on top of like the synths and strings and pianos and all that, it was, there was definitely some difficulty in that. But on top of that too, once I figured it out, it was much easier to kind of navigate how I was going to write all the harmonies and things like that. So as far as how long it took and the difficulty of it, that was definitely that was kind of the downside to it, I guess. But the upside is, I can do it all on my own time, and now I have the ability to write and do all that stuff.
Do you find that writing an instrumental song is harder than writing just a regular song with lyrics? Because without the lyrics, you kind of have to make up for it in the melody, and you kind of have to focus into like its own sort of groove. Do you find that more of a challenge?
Yeah, in a sense. You know, I kind of look at it like I'm singing with my guitar. I've never been able to do any kind of like vocal work or anything. I can't sing or anything like that. And so yeah, the way you structure songs is definitely a little bit different. But I think I've kind of gotten to the point with it where it once I can get a flow going, then it all just kind of pans out and is a little bit easier once I actually get the ball rolling with the song. But initially, yes, it was very difficult because all the music I used to write before I started this project was set up to have vocals in it. You know, I would have verses and choruses kind of set up, you know, with the thought of vocals being behind it. Whereas with this, I had to really push myself with what I was writing on the guitar and, you know, harmonies and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to that, do you have, like, one of the things that Zach really mentioned on his podcast that I really, really thought was cool was that with instrumental songs, they can mean whatever the audience member thinks it's going to mean because they don't really have any lyrics to base it off of. Do you find that as a good thing for you, knowing that something that you intended the song to be can be completely different to someone else as opposed to a song that might have lyrics and a theme which cannot be construed differently?
Yeah, you can. It's definitely open for a little bit more interpretation, you know, because lyrics and vocals can definitely, you know, navigate a song a certain way. So being instrumental, yeah, it's a lot more open to how people are going to interpret it. I got one of my songs got featured on a podcast like yesterday, called like Super Metal World, and I was listening to what they were saying about it. It was the one I sent you, and for me, it's more like it's like a little bit of a slower, like in a way, like ballady song compared to like all my other ones on the EP. But this one, the guys on the podcast said that it was the type of song they would want a cool massage therapist to play, and like it made them happy, I guess. And I don't know, just kind of hearing that was like, oh, okay, like they kind of got a different emotion, like on the other end of the spectrum than what I was getting from it. But that was really cool, you know, just kind of hear that someone else is getting different thought out of it than I am. So yeah, instrumental is really cool in that aspect.
Yeah, like I said before to everyone out there, I'll leave a link down below to his song, and it did. When the guy said that they thought they'd get like a massage for it, I could see like the first 30 seconds or the first minute of it kind of like that, because it is a song where you're kind of like, oh, I can relax and kind of chill out, you know, maybe after a hard day at work, I can just put this on. But then it really picks up, and then you're like, oh my God, this is a completely different song, and it really does change your mind, and it really about the song. Did you do that on purpose, or did you kind of, when you started recording it, where you're like, oh, this doesn't sound what I want it to sound like, and then you changed it, or was it always planned to be like that?
I think I definitely planned it out to be like that. I wanted it to have a little bit of a kind of a slower fade-in intro as far as just kind of clean and mellow and stuff, and then I wanted it to have a part where it just fucking hit. You know what I mean? Drums kind of kick in, and then distorted guitar and like breakdowns and shit. Yeah. So I think I did intend for that for the most part. I really like to be able to jump between feels, I guess, with the songs and things like that. So
yeah. So when you're writing a song, is there a checklist that you have like mentally of stuff that you need to get out of a song in order for you to want to be able to make it? Do you have to have like a certain melody, or do you have to have a certain style to it? Is there like a mental checklist where you're like, okay, if it hits all these checklists, then it's good to go?
Yes and no. I mean, there's definitely been times where I've gone into writing a song and like halfway through it, because I had like so many expectations or so many things I was planning to put into it, it just didn't pan out to be a good song or necessarily what I was looking for it to be. I definitely, you know, I've been trying to expand with like the types of instruments I'm putting into my stuff. I mean, the majority of it, you know, 80% of the music that I put out was just, you know, drums, bass, and guitar. But I, you know, started slowly learning like synth stuff and strings and pianos and all that. So I think a mental checklist for myself has been a little bit limiting before, and it's kind of like sent it in the wrong direction. So now I just kind of once I get the song going, I just kind of let it take me to where it'll take me as far as how it comes out, you know.
What would you say was the hardest thing about learning the guitar when you first started learning it?
Bar chords for sure, and anything that took more than like two fingers to try and hold down a note. I would say that, and then tablature, the actual like the numbers. I never learned how to read sheet music, so I've always just done tablature and stuff, and that was kind of a little bit of a learning curve. But once I got it down, it became pretty easy. But yeah, those two things I would say.
What was the first song that you learned on guitar?
The first song was all the rhythms to "Seek and Destroy" by Metallica,
Oh,
like the first full
yes.
song. I think I learned the chords to a Beatles song, like for my first ever, like, just this is D chord, this is A chord. But as far as like the first like full song rhythms and stuff, it was "Seek and Destroy" by Metallica.
That's awesome because I haven't mentioned this in probably my last 20 podcasts, but in my first few, I mentioned it so much that I didn't. But Master of Puppets and Seeker and Destroy are two of my favorite songs of all time when it comes to like inspiration wise. So that's really cool
Oh,
that
yeah.
you met it. And yeah, Seek and Destroy just starts out so. I mean, it is one of those songs that is pretty much is easy to pick up on, but it just still so damn effective the way that they
Oh, yeah.
the way that they did it. But when you're writing down your music, do you ever have a specific genre in mind, or do you like to kind of make it so that people from all genres that love all genres would be able to enjoy it? And you don't try to make it like become too much of one genre.
Yeah, well, for the most part, about past 10 years since I've been playing guitar, it's always been primarily metal, or like metalcore, guitar solos, breakdowns, like heavy shit. But now that I've kind of like put out more of a metal EP, I'm trying to start to expand into a different realm of things I want to write. I've been getting into a lot more like jazz, a lot more funk, and like stuff like that. But yeah, for the past 10 years, it's basically been like, all right, this is gonna be like a fucking heavy song. So yeah.
When it came down, when you were writing lyrics for most of your songs and earlier, what were some of the main themes that you like to deal with your lyrics?
I didn't have any lyrics in my songs. All of it's instrumental.
Before in the other bands you didn't do any of the lyrics?
In the other bands,
Yeah.
no. So I didn't write any like vocal stuff or lyric stuff really.
Okay.
I just did like guitar parts. All the other bands I was in, it was either like one or two guys like writing everything, like the vocalist and the guitar player, or like vocalist and drummer, whoever. I just kind of finesse guitar stuff, and that was pretty much about it. The music we put out. The first band I was in when I was 16, we were called From Ashes to Grace. We put out an EP called Let Go, and I joined like right at the tail end of that being recorded and being released. So I didn't actually have any like musical input on it necessarily. And then the second band I was in, What We Built, is actually kind of the same situation. I kind of joined it at like the tail end of the EP being finished up and then released. So I think I just kind of helped finesse like a couple little things, but I never like fully wrote like a full song with anyone until later on in the band. That was kind of part of my reason to go into this whole solo project thing, was because it was like I've been playing guitar for 10 years and I don't have any like published music under my own name and stuff, so, or that I could say like, oh, I wrote that, you know what I mean? So yeah, that was kind of my direction with that for the most part. But yeah, I can't write lyrics or anything. I can't write like vocal hooks or anything like that. That's where I lack for sure.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about music that the general population doesn't understand when it comes to being a musician?
Oh, geez, that's a tough question. Well, I would probably say that there's two ways to look at music, at least, or how musicians are going about it. Is either it's a hobby for them, or it's a career, or there's that middle point of they've always had it as a hobby and they're trying to turn it into a career. And that it really is, especially in this day and age, it's like a second job in a sense. Because I started this whole solo project thing like about a year ago, and it took me months to figure out like the recording aspect of it, tracking, gear, just writing, putting everything together, and that took up a lot of my time. I work 40 hours a week, so I'd get home from work and working 8 hours, and I get home in the next like 5 hours just like grinding shit out, so I think there's a lot of people that kind of view it as it's a lot more of a casual thing, whereas in reality, if you're really trying to do something with it, you're definitely, you basically have a second job. So,
absolutely. And especially in this day and age of social media, when you
Oh, yeah.
started out like 10 years ago, social media was just slowly starting to kick off with like Facebook and all those things. How has it evolved from when you were starting off to as now?
It's definitely a lot more of like a DIY type of situation. Back when like Facebook and MySpace and all that was kind of starting out, it was just like, take some cool pictures, post your music up on MySpace or whatever, just make sure people can hear it, and then like go start playing shows and just kind of hooking up with other bands, musicians, producers, stuff like that. Whereas now it's really, you gotta figure out a lot of stuff for yourself and kind of figure out what direction you're gonna go. Especially like with record labels and things like that. You see a lot less bands being signed to labels these days for sure. just doing it themselves, doing the merch themselves, doing the production themselves, all that. 10 years ago, if you would have told me that, someone like myself could like track my own music, send it off to a guy who would mix and master it, and you fix everything up and get it back to you to like pretty good quality, I wouldn't have believed you. But now it's 2018, and you can just do all this stuff over the internet. So that's, I'd probably say is the big thing now, is really, it's a lot more of there's a lot more opportunity for sure, but there's a lot more competition as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that, and I always like to say it's so much more time consuming though now, because like even on Facebook you got to message a lot of people, you got to have conversations with them, as opposed to back in the day when you could just print 1,000 flyers and just have them go off on the street and just be like, oh, hey, come see this show. I mean, people still do that, but it's just, it's so much more time consuming, but there are so many more benefits where like I couldn't be doing this podcast if it wasn't for this technology, and it's really helped out a lot too. But it's a double-edged sword both ways. But where do you see the future when it goes to promotions? Do you think it will come to more of just where everyone will just have to film everything, where then people will stop going to shows, or do you ever see that kind of envisioning? Because I've always wondered if that might be a potential future that we might have.
I think at some point we're going to be getting to almost like a pay-per-view situation for concerts and live shows, and especially with like Facebook Live and like new Instagram Live, all these streaming, stream on Twitch and all this stuff. I think it's starting to get to that point where it will basically almost just be a virtual situation with it. But with that too, I think there is still always going to be that foundation of people that do want to go and like see a band live and like talk to them live, or things like that, kind of have that one-to-one experience type of situation, being in the same room as them and all that. So, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised in like 10 years if you're like paying pay-per-view to see some big band play live or something.
Well, I have a perfect example of that. I'm from the Minneapolis area, and we just had Taylor Swift over the weekend come and play at where the Vikings play, and literally my entire Instagram feed was people just doing her entire show, just tweeting about it, taking photos of it. I didn't even need to go to the show just to see the whole thing. So it's like, even with the big acts too, it could slowly start to take over, where I do see it as so detrimental, because a lot of these musicians, especially the up-and-coming ones, that's a whole lot of their income when they're really trying to make a name for themselves, is they're booking shows and just getting people to come and show. So I really think that could be a huge mistake, where then we might have people all of a sudden that are just all about going live, where the only live concert will be just some guy playing in his living room, and then people just go in and like watch him through Twitch or some other live stream like that. So it is a little disturbing, but I do think that people innovate so much well with technology where they'll find a way to make it not as bad as people will think that it's going to be. So now we go to our audience favorite part of the podcast, the 5 questions that I like to ask. I ask these 5 questions, and I'll total them up and add them up once we reach a certain amount of podcast. I haven't really decided yet. And then we'll see what our most popular answers are. So for our first question, out of all the songs that have ever been written in the history of music, what is one song that you personally wish you would come up with yourself?
Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye.
Great choice.
Yeah, I know. I love that shit.
Oh, yeah. That was definitely a part of my college playlist for sure.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. All right, so for our second question, out of all the artists that have ever lived, dead or alive, doesn't matter, you can pick either one. If you could perform live with anyone for one show live, who would it be and why?
Probably Sebastian Bach from Skid Row, and he does his own like soul stuff. That guy just has like a phenomenal stage presence, and yeah, I don't know. That guy he knows what's up for sure. So I think it'd be super cool to play live with that guy.
He is one of like the 40 main artists that I've sent an email to but haven't heard back from him. It's only been about a week, so fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, we'll see what happens. Yeah, totally. Right. Yeah, exactly. So now for our third question, out of all the venues on the planet, if you could perform live at any venue, where would you choose?
Oh man. Probably I'm from Oregon, so up in Portland we have the Moda Center where the Trailblazers always play or have their games, and that's where all the like big acts come through. That's where I saw Metallica when I was like 13, 14.
Oh wow.
So probably there, like big stage arena and all that. Yeah, Moda Center for sure.
Now before I go on to my fourth question, I always tend to ask this. Since I'm from the Minneapolis area, I didn't realize that Minneapolis, when I started this podcast, has a huge metal scene. Absolutely huge. I mean, most people think about Minneapolis or Minnesota, they think about Prince and pop music, but how would you describe the scene in Oregon where you live? Is it a metal dominant genre, or what genre seems to dominate the music?
So there's definitely a good variety for sure. But I would say it probably leans a lot more towards that indie alternative, kind of like acoustic style.
It's still got kind of like that grunge aftertaste of like 20 years ago.
A little bit, yeah. Just like take out the distortion, and then you're kind of in that realm. Yeah, I mean, in Portland, you can just walk up and down the streets and just you walk by a bar and hear some indie band playing their set there, or even just on the street, just a couple people with acoustic guitars, or I mean, there's been a couple people I've seen just kind of like jamming out to like an amp and nothing else, just going at it. But yeah, I would kind of say more the all indie situation.
And how did you find it, even especially as a solo artist, establishing yourself when you're not playing a genre that is so popular in that area? Did you find it difficult?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm still doing this grind, still like pushing shit out and like connecting with people and all that. But since I've been playing metal in Oregon for the past 10 years and, you know, been pretty familiar with that scene, I know a decent amount of people and decent amount of bands I've been kind of able to connect with and share music with and things like that. So, yes and no. I think it's the real establishment will start once I really start hitting the show game pretty hard and playing around live.
All right, so now back to the 5 questions. Now we have the huge moment of truth here, our most famous question. What is a guilty pleasure song that you enjoy that most other people would never guess that you enjoy?
Oh, jeez. Oh, man. So I play most of my guilty pleasure songs at work, so all my coworkers would know this, but Bump and Grind by R. Kelly.
Yes.
Yeah. Dude, I love that R&B.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And now for our final question of the 5 questionnaires. If there was any artist whose existence musically, again, this person would still be alive. You aren't killing them. I have to mention this every time that I ask this. Every person, I have to mention this now. You are not killing them. They'll still be alive. Let's say they chose to become a carpenter instead of a musician, but everyone's memory of them as a musician was erased. No one remembered any of their lyrics or any of their songs. Nothing was ever published. Who would you do it to?
Oh, jeez. Oh man, that's a good one. Probably Green Day, to be honest. Yeah, Green Day. Yeah, Billy Joel with that whole fake accent shit. Is not my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, not my thing. I did start listening to them when I was like 12 or 13. Whenever they put out the
American Idiot.
American Idiot album.
That was every 12 and 13-year-old's favorite album at that certain time. Yep, for sure.
Oh yeah. They I guess they kind of helped transition me into almost like a rock phase, because I used to listen to like a lot of rap back in the day and stuff. But yeah, that was my jam for a minute, and then I started hearing like real good music. Like I think I'd never heard of like AC/DC before that. Then I did hear of AC/DC, and I was like, oh, like this is like real good music. Like fuck Green Day. You know?
I mean, other than Dookie, yeah, Dookie's the only thing of theirs that I enjoy. But yeah, other than that, I completely agree with you. They peaked too early on, then they just kind of all went too downhill, and plus their whole scene is kind of disappeared. But one of the questions that I haven't asked for a while on this podcast that I'd like to bring back up again is that obviously rock music and metal music too, well, they're part of the same genre, have gone into a decline in the popular sphere, especially for the last like 20 years. I think like ever since the mid 90s, it's been really slowly starting to go downhill, and now it's not even close to one of the most popular genres. What do you think is the reason behind that, and what do you think musicians can do to sort of make rock make more of a comeback into the public sphere?
That's a good question. It's, I feel like music goes through phases a lot, for sure. Especially in the internet age and all that. I feel like, hip hop and rap and all that really is like stepping up right now as far as what a lot of people are listening to and stuff. I read some article the other day that was like 2017 was like the year where it's transitioned from like rock and roll was being the most like listened to genre to like being rap and hip hop and stuff. So I really think it's kind of like a cultural thing and just a kind of day and age thing. I think at some point people are just gonna get kind of like washed out with certain genres. You kind of see with like hair metal and stuff like that. You had like all these big bands like Def Leppard, like, Skid Row, and all these guys that like really dominated the scene. And then you had a lot of these like 90s hair metal bands, even like early 2000s, that were trying to do it, and they just didn't get anywhere or, make much of an impact. So I think that's really just what it is music kind of evolves and adapts in different ways, especially with like EDM now, and like a lot of electronic music. You can really get some crazy sounds, and I see all these like crazy mixes on like YouTube where it's just like I saw one where this guy just took a bunch of skateboarding sounds, like grinding and like just doing ollies and like hitting the board on shit, and just made a beat completely out of that. Just processed it to the point where it like sounded like real instruments almost. And so, yeah, I would say for right now, it's a lot more of a cultural thing, and gonna just kind of go back and forth, and I don't think there's ever gonna be like a place or a time where it's just one thing stays the dominant genre, and because it's also like an age thing for kids, like I'm 24 now, and even kids that are like 6-7 years younger than me will say shit like, oh, like you listen to old people music if I'm listening to like AC/DC or like Led Zeppelin, stuff like that, like kids don't really listen to that anymore. It's rare. I mean, there are some that do, but it's very rare. And so yeah, I'd probably say that's what it's gonna look like for a while, especially with the internet. That's probably how it's gonna look.
Yeah,
all
it is unfortunate, rappers. But I hope it does eventually make a comeback. You never know. I mean, all types of music somehow seem to make at least a minor comeback, which is what I hope. But where can people find your music? I mean, are you on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud? Where could people find it?
Yeah, so I'm on pretty much every platform: SoundCloud, Bandcamp, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify. The only one I'm not on as of right now is Pandora. Pandora is pretty hard to get onto, from what I understand. So I'm still trying to like send my stuff to them and get them to submit it. Yeah, they can find me anywhere. Just type in my name, Cody Held.
I've found I've had like a lot of people come on and say horror stories about Pandora. What about them makes it so difficult to get your music on?
I don't know. Like I read a couple forums and stuff, and I think they have actual like they don't have like an AI for processing their music or anything. I think they have like actual people go and listen to at least like new artists and stuff like that. And then there's also like the other standards of like you got to have like the right sized images for your album artwork, and all your tracks have to be mastered on like a certain like a good enough level for them to accept it and things like that. Because they've definitely put some garbage up on Pandora. Like, there's been times there's songs that have come on, I'm like they really let this come on. But yeah, especially for new artists, from my understanding, like it's pretty difficult to get on there. I submitted it like probably like a month and a half ago, and like I'm still waiting for them to give me an email saying that they got done reviewing it and stuff. So I don't know. It's just Pandora. They're probably just pissed off that everyone goes to Spotify now, so they just want to make everyone else mad or something. So.
I was gonna say, because we had one band on here last week, and they were talking about how they got rejected on Pandora because in the review, Pandora said they don't sound like anything that we've ever heard of, which is why we're gonna reject you because we can't lump you into anything. And I was like, well, that should be kind of a compliment too, because if you don't sound like anything, that means that can be a whole new genre that you can build off of. So I don't know what Pandora's got going on. I had a lot of people have been talking about how they want to boycott it, and I really didn't know too much about it. But yeah, I think if they actually have like a more stricter application process, that can be both good and bad. But when it comes to releasing music too, you said that you're currently working on releasing some songs. When could you expect maybe to get those released?
New stuff. I'm hoping to like put out another single here before the end of the year. I'm still kind of dealing with my arm situation, so I'm not able to play guitar as much as I want to right now. I'm still able to write and stuff, just like on my computer, and figure things out. But I should be releasing a single before the end of the year, a new single before the end of the year.
Absolutely. And if you have any live shows coming up next, definitely let me know, and I'd love to promote and plug any of the artists that I have on here. And Cody, it's been absolutely great having you on. I'm going to thank Zach a lot after this is done recording for recommending you. You were a great guest. And again, everyone, Cody Held, I highly recommend you go and check this guy out. I listened to just one of his songs and I was hooked. He's got really a great mind when it comes to music, and I recommend everyone give it a listen. And like I said below, all the links to all of his stuff will be down below. Definitely go and check this guy out. Oh, and I'd like to ask you two final questions before we end here. I almost always forget these questions, but the first one is, if someone were to walk up to you on the street and say, hey, I'm really thinking about trying to form this band, I got a really good idea for it, what would be the best piece of advice that you could have for him in order for his experience to be a positive one?
Do as much research as possible on every aspect of what you're trying to do. If you're recording yourself, look into as much gear as possible. During this whole process, Reddit became my best friend. I'm on Reddit constantly, like reading reviews about stuff, and like if I'm having technical issues, stuff like that. Just do as much research as possible, and also stick to what you want to do. Don't let people dictate how your music should sound. Just make it sound the way you want it to sound. You know, put out what you want to put out and do what you love to do.
Yep. And then lastly, if you could go back in time and talk to your 5-year-old younger version of yourself, so you'd be 19, then what would be the best piece of advice that you would give yourself musically?
Probably just really, man, yeah, like just push guitar as much as possible, push a lot more, expand as much as possible. Because like I said, for 10 years it was just guitar. I wasn't learning mixing, I wasn't learning recording, I wasn't learning really drums or anything. I was just learning like just guitar and all that. And so just really expanding. It's one of those. This is one of those situations where knowing a little bit about a lot can go a lot further than knowing a lot about a little bit.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
I would say that.
Absolutely. And again, you guys, Cody Held, go check this guy out. We wish him nothing but the best. Cody, it was great having you on, and this is DD on the Spot.
On,
Absolutely, man. And this is DD on the Spot. Ryan Johnson signing out. Have a great day, everyone. All right.